Japan's lower house has formally reappointed Sanae Takaichi as Prime Minister 10 days after her historic landslide victory in the snap elections. Takaichi, 64, made history in October when she became Japan's first woman premier. Her party went on to secure a two-thirds majority in the lower house vote held on February the 8th. Strengthening her grip on power, in her initial statements, Takaichi has said she wants to bolster Japan's military capabilities, a move that could further strain relations with China and raise regional tensions. At the same time, the newly reappointed Prime Minister faces pressure at home to revive Japan's sluggish economy, address rising living costs and stabilise public confidence. With a strong parliamentary mandate, Takaichi now begins a new term with broad authority, but also with major challenges on both the domestic and international fronts. We are now being rejoined by Jim Rice. Thank you for joining us back here today on NewsX World. So Takaichi has signalled plans to push more conservative policies. What are the potential impacts of these policies on social issues like immigration, defence and constitutional reform?
Okay, those are all excellent questions. Well, as you know, Japan's constitution, which was written immediately after the Second World War by the United States, has one of its sections prohibits the use of war, and so it's called the Peace Constitution. Although this has been reinterpreted over the past decade, Japan has been building up its military in large part in response to China's own military buildup, which is unprecedented. And in terms of the other question that you mentioned, in terms of immigration, Japan has always taken a very strong position against allowing foreign migrant long-term workers to settle in the Philippines. And in many ways, this has come as the population of the Philippines ages. It's now one of the oldest populations, and this is contributing to the economy slowing down over the past couple of decades. So the third thing, of course, is I think it ties back into the Philippines and the South China Sea, or what we here in the Philippines call the West Philippine Sea, because China poses a real threat not only to Taiwan, which of course we know about, but also to the Philippines, because China has encroached in the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines. And during the Biden administration, his presidency built up an alliance between Japan, the Philippines, the United States, and Australia in order to try and deter further encroachment from the PRC. So these are challenges which the current Prime Minister of Japan now faces, and I hope she's able to manage these difficulties.
And what economic challenges and opportunities might Japan face under Takaichi's government, considering rising living costs and fiscal priorities?
Well, Japan is an advanced economy, and it's faced these kind of difficulties before. As many of your viewers know, Japan exports, but actually it tends to locate its factories, its manufacturing centers in the places where they sell their goods. So Japan has really become far more sophisticated in its management of supply chains. I would say that the biggest problem that Japan faces long term, though, is its demographic decline. And again, for various reasons, Japan has been reluctant to allow immigration.
And how might Takaichi's reappointment influence Japan's relationship with allies such as the United States and partners in the Indo-Pacific?
Well, again, that's a great question. I think that Takaichi's strong mandate, which has been given over the weekend in the lower house, puts her in a strong position to be able to further build up her relations with, the Trump administration. The problem is, at this point, very few people, certainly I, don't know the position that Trump is going to take regarding the Indo-Pacific. Will the Trump administration be engaged as Biden was during his tenure, or will Trump pull back? But if anyone can manage what is a very mercurial President Trump, it would Takaichi.
Thank you so much, Jim Rice, for joining us here today on NewsX World. It was a pleasure speaking with you today. Garbage has begun to pile up on street corners in the Cuban capital of Havana, attracting hordes of files and reeking of rotten food, in one of the most visible impacts of the US bid to prevent oil from reaching the Caribbean's largest island. Cuban authorities have reported that this month that only 44 of Havana's 106 rubbish trucks were able to keep operating due to fuel shortages, slowing garbage collection. Cardboard boxes, used bags, plastic bottles and rags have piled up on the street corners across the seafront capital as some residents sorted through the waste looking for scraps as they could be reused, while motorists, pedestrians and bikers are forced to circumvent the imposing heaps. Meanwhile, the UN spokesperson Stephanie Dravarik and some locals have reacted. Let's listen in to what they had to say.
The General's been following the situation in Cuba extremely closely, and I can tell you that he's very concerned about the situation in Cuba, and which is worsening as oil needs continue to be unmet. As you know, the General Assembly has consistently called for an end to the embargo imposed by the United States on Cuba. The Secretary General would like to see all parties pursue dialogue and respect for international law yet again. But our teams on the ground are working with the government to help support the humanitarian relief for the people of Cuba.
Mucho basurero. Y ahora con el problema del petróleo, más todavía. No sé, sugiero que muchachos que no trabajan, ¿viste? O los presos que están, que los saquen a recoger la basura, yo no sé, algo, porque el basurero no para. Y ahora con este problema del petróleo, mucho menos. ¿Vale? Él me entendió, para mí, no sé. Porque la verdad que con eso no salimos de los virus que hay. Vamos a salir nunca.
Aquí en La Habana, donde quiera el hay. No sé cómo será el problema energético, si es el problema de petróleo, si es el problema de qué, pero es así. Toda la basura esa, a mí me parece que eso deberían recogerlo, porque aquí hace más de como 10 días que no viene el carro, y ya te estamos mirando. Por lo menos ahí son 7 o 8 camiones.
We are now being joined by Collins Chong-Yu Keats, who's a Foreign Affairs, Security and Strategy Analyst, joining us from Kuala Lumpur. Thank you for joining us here today on NewsX World. Who bears responsibility for Cuba's worsening conditions? External pressure from sanctions or internal economic and infrastructure challenges?
Well, we have seen how this is a mixture of both. We have seen this is also a systemic constraint domestically on the part of the regime in Cuba. We have seen how, of course, also the restriction in terms of access to financing, to shipping, insurance, refined fuel markets, and of course also this has produced further constraints, and on the part of the mobility of goods, as well as also contributing to the factor of the shortages of food, but we have seen how now fuel rationing is now being politically calibrated, and of course the risk of inflation, and of course the ripple effects on the people. But we have seen also how the systemic and structural effects of years and decades of these issues on being existing, and of course also the impact on energy infrastructure and all that. So we have seen how the recent days, the impact of these restrictions and access, and there have also been this wariness on the part of traditional allies, including China and Russia, who both have been wary of providing further support system to Cuba, and of course also Russia is itself being restricted in terms of financial capacity, as well as China, who has also been wary of further deepening its presence in Cuba in terms of what has happened in the case of Venezuela. And this is the of course a mystery of a multi-pronged multifactorial capacity as to what has happened now in Cuba, but and we foresee that to continue at least for the days and weeks to come, unless there is this profound changes on the part of how the response system will be. But as of now, we have seen how this volatility and the compounding impact of the U.S. sanctions have really further pushed Cuba into a tighter spot in this regard, Eileen.
And should international organisations such as the United Nations or humanitarian agencies intervene to address food, fuel, waste crisis in Cuba?
We have seen that before, and to no avail, unless there is this structural push domestically, and of course there's been little to no serious efforts being seen, and hence we have seen how the sanctions are still in place, and of course also it needs to have this systemic integration of efforts both domestically and also the injection of support externally. And of course for the time being, we have seen how this has been dire in terms of the situation on the ground for the people in Cuba, in terms of the collapse of this the long-term confidence in terms of the governance structure, in terms of the capacity and capability of the regime to provide the necessary control and support, especially in terms of food security, especially in terms of the availability of food supply to the people. Food rationing is a secondary crisis. Of course, we have seen how it's now being calibrated to ensure that the critical sectors are met in terms of the demands for fuel and foods, but the sentiments of the people in terms of ensuring minimum food availability, which will be critical to any regime stability. So energy blackouts are being tolerated more in terms of the acceptance level by the people, but in terms of food availability and empty food shelves, this is resonating, and this will be hugely impactful to the sentiments of the people. So the leadership understands that food scarcity and not the shortages of fuel or energy alone, which will trigger any potential social unrest. And of course, we have seen that before in the case of Sudan. It has been systemic, it has been endemic now, and for the case of Cuba, it remains to be seen now for the next this couple of days in this timeline. But of course, the U.S. sanctions also a major test for the leadership in terms of how you respond to this, and also how reliable the traditional allies of Cuba will be in times like this. And we have seen that now. We have not seen that level of support being given for now.
Thank you so much, Colin Strong-Yuki, for joining us here today.
Thank you, Ellie.
On NewsX World. Thank you.